Hi everyone. I think we'll start with an introduction. We have a few slides for this discussion, which is going to focus on, I guess, fundraising. We're going to talk a little bit about M&As and then some interesting trends in the market and new technologies. So I guess we'll start. Go ahead.
Yes, so if you look back, gentlemen, here is your name. Maybe we just go through the row and start with Laurent, and if each of you would give like a 3-minute, description of what they do, what their firm does as a start along the line. So the first one is Laurent.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laurent Choppe, leading the life science activity of Cukierman Investment House. We are an investment bank specialized in life science based in Tel Aviv and Lausanne, and today doing M&As, licensing, partnering, and private placement for startups in Europe, US, and Israel. Nice to meet you all.
The next one is Edouard. Edouard.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Edouard Gobitz, I'm one of the managing partners at Asklepios Advisor, a healthcare specialist investment bank that has been set up 10 years ago. We operate all across the healthcare spectrum in financing, M&A, partnering deal, in biotech, pharma, MedTech, digital health, and so on. And we operate, original headquarters is in France, and then we have offices now in Italy, in Switzerland, in Germany, in Norway, and also in Canada. Nice meeting you.
Thank you, Edouard. Then Leo Smit, the one and only venture company up here on the panel.
Okay, my name is Leo Smit. I'm CEO of Hy2Care from the Netherlands. We have a therapy in the field of cartilage repair, a hydrogel that enables your body to recreate cartilage by itself. We are in a clinical stage, one patient short of finishing our European clinical trial and preparing for the US trial, and currently in fundraising in a very interesting, intriguing, and challenging market.
Thank you, Leo. Remi, please.
Yep, so Remi Spagnol for Supernova Invest. We are a deep tech focused venture fund. We're based in France, 35 people in Paris and Grenoble. And we invest in all segments of deep tech. Healthcare is one of which, but we also do clean tech, space tech, quantum computing, nuclear, and many other interesting stuff. We manage close to 800 million euros and invest from seed stage up to late venture stage, from 1 million up to 15 million. Glad to meet you all.
Thank you, Remi. And last from the panelists, Marco Wendel.
Yeah, hi everybody, my name is Marco. I'm a little bit the alien here on the stage, I think. Not really an investor and also not a venture. I'm managing a network, the Medical Valley Network. It's the excellence network for MedTech and digital health across Germany. It's across or around 700 companies in this network, and we are trying to foster innovation in the triangle between industry, research, and healthcare providers. And we are a kind of service provider for especially small and medium-sized and extremely young companies, startups that are helping them in market access in Germany and trying always to fill the gap on financing. What we are currently working on is a kind of accelerator program with a attached fund that should help European medtech and digital health companies in finding investment and getting mentoring support and expert support on their way to the market. And yeah, happy to meet you all and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. Then Eli, my co-chair here, please tell us something about yourself and Sanara.
Hi everyone, I'm Eli Yered. I'm the CFO of Sanara Ventures. I'll start by explaining our name a little bit. Sanara in Latin means to heal the cure, which is our vision and hope to help the world. We're a VC. We started as an incubator in 2015. owned by Philips Global and Teva Pharmaceuticals in Israel, and initially invested in seed stage companies in digital healthcare, bioconvergence, and medical devices. And 3 years ago, we also started a follow-on fund called Sanara Capital, where our LPs, we have Philips and Teva also as LPs in the fund, and also several other LPs globally, and investing in the same verticals in either the best companies we have from the incubator or from some external companies, primarily Israeli companies or Israeli related. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you, Eli. So my name is Merz. I'm a specialist for MedTech investing in venture, and did that for many different firms. And in the last couple of years, I started to work with New Harbor Venture Partners. So that is a transatlantic placement agent. So we are helping venture and growth companies to fundraise. We don't do M&A or IPO and these other things that investment banks would do. We're really very focused on that. And we have now raised in more than 50 private placement, over 600 millions. We are just four people, so we only do 3 to 5 deals per year. We are selective on that. And if you look at our webpage, you will find that we have worked with many very well-known venture companies together. So you would say they all know everybody in the field, and don't need an advisor. And in principle, yes, they do know everybody. But I can tell you that what you all know, raising funds is a very lengthy process. It takes a lot of time, and these people, these fund managers, having a lot of companies, they just don't have the time for that. That's why they will come to people like us. So with that, we have put here a bunch of discussion topics we want to we would like to talk about among ourselves here, hopefully of some interest to the audience. At the end, we would also take questions from the audience, and we see how the discussion goes. We don't have to rest on one thing.
So I think you see the key points that we want to discuss. I think we'll start with the fundraising, which probably most of the attendees here are very interested in. I think Remi, maybe you can talk a little bit about the valuations and what you see currently in the market from a VC perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I think the global sentiment over the last months, not to say quarters, has been a bit difficult. I've seen a lot of VCs reinvesting in their own company, in their portfolio company, rather than in new companies. So we have this statistic that approximately 80% of the last in the private runs led in the last 12 months have been led internally, 80% led internally. So that's a statistic that speaks for itself. And then, yeah, we have, funds still need to invest their money, right? That's why LPs are paying them, basically. So money is still there. There is some dry powder. And, but I think, yeah, there have been more selectivity for sure. And it's kind of a new situation compared to what we had between 2015 and 2020, definitely.
Yes. Anyone else wants to add to in terms of valuations? Do you have any comment?
Yes, I recommend. I just read the last Silicon Valley Bank report on healthcare VC investment. And they just said that we are now in 24 coming back to the level of 22 and even above. 9 billion were invested in the first semester, and 6 billion are in progress now for the second semester. So they said in the report it's cautious optimism on that, and much less down round than in 23. That was really a nightmare for everyone. So that's and as well they noted, because they counted all the deals in Europe and US, a substantial increase in first financing money That was for new startup almost not impossible, but very tough last year.
So I think just to add to that from Sanara's perspective, I think I can talk about two key points. First, I'll talk about valuations in general, and then a little bit about Israel. So I think what we're seeing is that it's more difficult to fundraise. I believe globally, in Israel maybe a little bit more, but we're seeing now companies that their valuations, Sanara invests in round A to start with, and we have a certain valuation that we're looking for. And now we're seeing companies that are more mature that now are available for us to look at. So I think on one hand, there is a decrease in valuations, but at the same time, there's, like Sanara, still significant capital that needs to be deployed. So VCs are still looking for investments, and the strong companies seem to be able to overcome this challenge. And then I think there was a comment here about Israeli companies. I think, at least from what we're seeing, the war in Israel has been impacting fundraising, but the technology sector in Israel is really strong. So it's still the strong companies are able to continue to fundraise. Although there are some regions where investors just are not interested in investing in Israel today.
Thank you. So among the, what we learned here also in the internal discussion prior to this is that there is investors around, but the closing is a real challenge, and I guess it has to do with the problem to find a lead investor. And I mean, Leo, you're probably exactly in such a situation. Tell us a little bit about it, what it really means, what you see, the reactions when you talk to people as a startup.
Yeah, so we've been, just to put the context there a little bit, I joined Hy2Care 5.5 years ago with a very small Series A investment round, which I think nowadays you would call seed, which was only meant to last for 3 years and then span the area up until our first in-human trials. Around that time, we got EIC Accelerator, so that's 2.5 million grant, and my own investors matched that with another 2.5 million equity to bring us as far ahead forwards as we could, which is about, early next year that we will run out. Actually, it was before, but good cash management makes you live longer. So since, I think, 3/4 of a year ago, we started fundraising for getting to the next phase. We are finalizing now our European trial, preparing for CE, and we're also talking to the FDA about starting the US trial. So first half of 2026, we want to treat the first clinical patient in the US and the first commercial patient in Europe. To get there, we started fundraising for 9 million euros, a little bit less than a year ago. And within 2 months, we had about 10 to 11 million euro on the table, which was all investment, soft commitments from followers. And then we were looking for a lead investor with a healthcare, from the healthcare space, who could do that. And that's where we found out that a company like ours then comes into a challenging period. It's very intriguing and interesting, I must say, but it's very challenging as well. We're in a little bit of a death valley where a lot of the seed funds, I think Eli just said, you're looking for a certain valuation. And I think in all fairness, we would be a little bit beyond that if you just go for a seed fund. So we are too late stage for a seed fund. And when it comes to the healthcare investors, they actually would like to spend much more on us, but ask us to come back for Series C instead of Series B. And that is the challenge where we are, and where I have a lot of compatriots at other startups, that we really have a death valley to bridge that gap to get there. I think it is fair enough for a healthcare fund that we would also ask us to commit us not just for this 9 million euro, but also for the 30 million coming up in 2 years to finance the US trial. That you want certain milestones achieved, and that's where we need another year to get them. So that I understand that challenge. But the challenge is for a company like ours, of course, how to get there.
Right. So, Marco, I guess an organization such as yours is very much involved with relatively early things. So, what do you try to do to help these earlier groups? You know, and maybe you define how early is early, because my feeling is always at the very beginning, it's kind of easier than in between. You know, in between is where Leo is. Early on, you find like politically motivated investments, local support, blah, blah, blah. And that's probably where you are, but do you feel that pressure there as well, or you just feel it when you try to help them to get to the next stage?
Yeah, I mean, pressure is there, of course. We are currently as Medical Valley supporting from pre-seed to seed in the most case. So having some programs directly for researchers for bringing spin-offs more or less to a certain stage and spinning out of the universities. So that's okay, so it's public money. Then they are spin-off, and then they need, of course, the seed money, and that's mostly business angel money. And what we have done is, because in Germany, I think it's the same in other countries, there are many business angels jumping around, but not all want to, or very, very limited ones want to invest in MedTech because they don't understand the market. So it's really the question how to find those that are trying to invest in really this regulated MedTech market. And there we are having currently set up a kind of business angel network in our region, 25 business angels. And this is more or less our try to answer the need for capital from this very early stage companies. And of course, we are also trying to partner with other business angel networks and institutional investors that invest in very early stages. But it's also very, very hard work, and it's not easy to get this money. It's also long lasting, even if the procedures and the due diligence is perhaps not so hard like with VCs in later stage. But yeah, finding really this early stage money is also a big challenge, at least in our region.
Are you earlier than HealthTech Gründerfonds, or is that the same in terms of timing?
We are normally a little bit earlier, so I would say directly before HealthTech Gründerfonds. And of course, not everybody gets HealthTech Gründerfonds, so we are then working with the rest.
Right.
I mean, perhaps one comment also to the lead investor topics that we discussed, or Leo discussed a little bit. That's also a problem, of course, in our network. This public fund investors that would co-invest and other investors, they are all here. We are having, I think, currently 5 or 6 startups that are also looking for this lead investor, and that's pretty hard. And yeah, I fully agree.
So one thing that I can add in terms of the challenges of fundraising is that we're trying to, I mean, we have our VC where companies are typically that we invested in are mature enough, but we also have the incubator and early stage companies that are being challenged. So we're trying to be creative in terms of approaching strategic investors as much as possible. The strategics are less sensitive, I think, to the what's going on with the financial markets. So that's one aspect of what we're trying to do. And given the challenges in Israel recently, also we're in the process of developing an initiative where we want to host an event or a series of events where we bring Israeli startups to markets that are receptive of Israel, and give them access to mid-tier medical device companies. There's a lot of large companies strategics that are not in Israel, for example. We have all the large Merck, Pfizer, Philips, but we don't have mid-tier medical device companies coming to Israel. So we're trying to set up an initiative where we would invite these kind of investors that could be interested as well. So being flexible and creative, I think, is very important these days.
Thank you, Eli. So we noted here, again, that's out of the discussion we had before, that it seems like earlier is more difficult than growth. So, Edouard, is that something which you notice, which you want to comment on? Is it really like that growth is fairly easier than earlier stage, or?
Yeah, thanks, Beat, for that. Yeah, definitely, it's something we noticed that in the past few years, but it's even more impressive, let's say, in the past 12 or 18 months. There is really the pre-commercial and the early commercial stage. If you are in early commercial stage, of course, there are no more questions, no more discussions regarding the product, regarding the manufacturing, so on. It's really go-to-market strategy, how you will succeed in your commercial stage. When you are in the pre-commercial phase, of course, there's always a big gap, a huge difference, and things, let's say, are more and more difficult for that, because it's very difficult to prove when you are pre-commercial that you have a market for, that you will get clinical adoption, that you will get the doctors on a day-to-day basis who are using that. And therefore, also, it's part of the shift of some funds in their investment scope is to go more on the growth stage. Because, of course, you go on the growth stage, you put money, and then you'll get a result within, let's say, 2 to 3 years for a possible then exit. So yes, definitely the gap is increasing between pre-commercial and early commercial stage. And just to elaborate again on what Eli just said on the strategic, yes, it's also something at Asklepios that we've seen massively on the past 2 years. More and more strategic. We use not just to come when companies were above $5 million revenues and so on, are now considering early stage investment. So are considering investment in even earlier phase, even at pre-commercial, pre-C marks, pre-510Ks. And this, of course, is a bit of game changer, because getting some strategic on board is, of course, another way of financing, bringing other type of deals. But of course, it's important to be flexible as part of the economic environment. Thanks.
Thank you. So maybe, Eli, to you and also to Remi, this, again, is it really true that much later is that much more difficult? In looking back with my experience with companies in Israel, I always felt and I always admired the fact that as long as their technology, let's say, is sound, or the scientific clinical basis is given, they're very, very tough in surviving, and they always had to be, probably because it's a smaller economy, and a lot of Europeans maybe don't want to invest, maybe even less than Americans in Israel, so they always had to rely on a relatively small biotope. But they're like almost not to kill. That's how I would say, because they're really tough in surviving. While my feeling is in the US, one point people would just drop the ball and that's it. Let's go to the next thing. It has to be quick. And is that still the case?
I think, first of all, at least from what I'm seeing, the biggest challenge at least from what I'm seeing, is really to go from seed to round A. I mean, there's a lot of problems thereafter in round B and round C, as the companies grow. But most of the companies that we invested in, they die in between seed to round A, and maybe it's a cultural thing or from the army, but we have. There's a company that we invested in from the fund recently, and and from the incubator, and the founder, he just I don't know, didn't work without being paid for a year just to help the company, save the company, and then we found a strategic that invested, and maybe that sort of mentality was very helpful. So I think that's a good example.
All right. So Remi, if I'm correct, your company Supernova has made investments with an Israel background, at least, if not completely Israel. And the same like also your colleagues at Panellists. So you didn't shy back. But what are your thoughts if you look, would you do it today? Have you done it because it's like before, the outbreak of the war and this attack on the 7th, and it would be a problem now or not in general? How do you look at it?
Yeah, I mean, so Israel has always been part of our investment strategy because it's arguably one of the most innovative countries in the world, right? It's very, very often we come across a company in Europe or 2 or 3 companies in Europe, and we find that there is an Israeli equivalent that is actually doing better or has better characteristics. So, yeah, I mean, this is a very attractive market for the startup. From the VC perspective. The other thing is that they have very good access to the US market, right? So they can really quickly break into the US, which is like the question we ask to all companies at growth stage. I'm specializing on growth investment. So yeah, I mean, it's a good market for us. I cannot comment on the current situation. Obviously, it's very, very, very tense, and we have a lot of questions from our LPs. So we try to mitigate that, or at least we request the companies we have in Israel to have a mitigation plan. Sorry. So what we find is the most worrisome part is if the company has production in Israel. So that's a large problem when it's the case for now, and no solution. So we try to mitigate by implementing new manufacturing circuits. If they have some R&D, which is often the case, we try to understand what kind of project are at risk. If it's the mid-term project, the long-term project, if people are getting called into the army. So at the end of the day, it represents a risk, and we just do as every investor. We do a SWOT at the end of our investment note, and in the threat part, we state geopolitical risk can have an impact on the R&D development timeline, and then we assess the risk benefit ratio.
Okay, I mean, does it mean to a degree that you ask companies maybe to make the step out in the world, out of Israel earlier than they used to? Because, the way I look back at it, it was always, yes, Israel is great in the innovation, finding new things, but when it comes to marketing and regulatory, and given that the MedTech market is mostly US and the acquirers sit there, sooner or later they always kind of moved there. And, 3 years ago, we advised Augmetics, which is an augmented reality spine navigation thing. And they were looking for $30+ million. And we told them, the best is you incorporate the company now in the US, and get a holding there. Of course, keep every production R&D in Israel, but do the regulatory stuff and do the marketing out of the US headquarters. And frankly, so we found them HIG and Revival Healthcare as big investors, big firms. And I think for them, it was crucial that the company switched, and we told them, switch before you go out. Don't let them tell you have to. You have already done it, and I think it went well. So is this happening now even earlier, or what do you think? This moving out.
Yeah, I mean, the US exposure is becoming more and more important for sure. I cannot cite examples of Israeli company moving earlier because it's just been a year since there is this huge geopolitical risk. But definitely hear some discussions with regards to transferring the headquarters of the companies, or even for R&D stage companies outside of Israel right now. Yeah.
So one of the things that we've noticed, and maybe Laurent, maybe you could talk a little bit about the Asian and or Chinese investors, which seem to be less proactive recently, or I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yes, for China, you mean in general, or
China, Asia.
it's mainly due. It's not at all related to the war. It's more because Chinese groups are more. It's more difficult to plan U.S. consolidation with or U.S. M&A, and there is the commercial issue between China and U.S. started a few years ago, but we feel it very strongly now, more than before. And I wanted to add on the move of some MedTech companies. I see that most of the time it's not due to, well, not most of the time, in many times it is due to not for production issues. It's more the corporate stakeholder, which one of the big MedTech or even mid-size, they would like to have a closer look, and they are the one, if they are in the cap table or if they are with a licensing agreement, or they are the one that are asking to move or to push. This is a big impact when they are in, and I recommend to have one corporate stakeholder, anyone, anywhere, and the earliest possible.
Have you seen any issues, Edouard, with the Chinese investors in terms of the U.S. Companies, not being very supportive in companies that have Chinese investors? Is that something that you've noticed, or?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. Yeah, we've seen that in 2 previous clients that we had in the past 2 years. We had for one, they had a licensing agreement with a Chinese company, and another one was a Chinese corporate as a minority stakeholder. And then, as part of the upcoming new financing on that we were working, they were a bit reluctant exactly to bring possible a US investor or other US strategic on board as well. So I would not say that it's 100% for any case. Every case is different, but yes, it becomes a bit more difficult to let's say, to approach and to attract Chinese, let's say, investor or Chinese corporates, even if we have ongoing deals with some local corporate on the MedTech side. If now we expand a bit Asia, just not only China, but Japan, on the contrary, we notice that now Japanese corporate and some Japanese investors are more and more keen now to do investment, let's say, outside of Japan, and now more and more targeting Europe. So it could be maybe just the beginning, but maybe a preliminary indicator of some Japanese interest for European, let's say, investment opportunity.
Thank you. So I think during our discussion, if I remember correctly, somebody said, and that maybe one of the advisors here, that more than or up to 2/3 of all new financings involve a corporate investor. And I mean, my belief is corporate investors being on a deal is obviously a validation, a very good validation. So is it that, ventures should almost kind of devote a big time of their big part of their time to get a corporate on board so as to validate such a deal and to bring all these, as Leo described, these waiting co-investors, etc., to make them move, or at least one lead investor? Has that become so much more important than 3-4 years ago, the percentage, let's say, of corporate investment? I don't know who of you said that and kind of can comment on it.
I realized, I don't know about the number, but it's because it's anywhere small sample. But when today, I say that there is a rise in confidence from the investor and fund side, but what I saw is that they try to have companies that are checking all the boxes. And one of the boxes which is important for them is having a corporate validation, whatever the amount invested. And this event of relying on big MedTech or big digital company is more pregnant than before to avoid taking too much risk. Beside the later consolidation or potential acquisition, it's really one of the boxes that is making people more confident. That's what I saw. To give you statistics, it's a tough one.
it just sounded like a lot and more important than in the past because nobody
yes.
brought up in, and we basically having this, how do you fundraise, because it's an important topic each and every time, and I just noted it came up this time. So maybe let's ask Leo. I mean, given that you're in such a situation, understanding that your financing need is relatively limited, but also thinking that for corporates it's more the strategic interest and the need to put 4 instead of 2 million or something like that. I mean, have you focused on this? How do you see it from your side as a VC, as a venture company, as a startup?
I agree. I've worked many years for a corporate as a supplier in the biomaterials field. So I think it is a very strong validation. What I do see some of other startups around is that they are trying to find a strategic investor for their core project. That I find a little bit scary. When it comes to an exit, it seems like you've made an early deal that keeps you floating, but then how about your exit? So we are a little bit more careful with that. Our technology it's platform technology. So not only do we have our own therapy with purely our hydrogel, but we also can make combinational products. And yeah, we are following that route. We are talking to a number of orthopedic strategics to see if we can do adjacent projects where on a part we can have a licensing deal with them, which will give you an income. We can ask them to become an investor.
But you wouldn't want them as investors?
And then next to that, yes, indeed, they can become an investor as well. Yes, I would very much like to have them on my cap table. More than one, actually, would be my hope. Yeah.
Probably be very helpful.
Yes, certainly.
So I think moving on from fundraising and I guess talking about the main purpose of fundraising, which is ultimately to have an exit, I think probably everyone here has a perspective on the M&A activity. So maybe Remi, you can start by kind of reviewing what you've been seeing.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, the topic of fundraising and M&A is intimately, tied because from a venture perspective, what we do is like, it's a controversial saying here, but we follow the M&As, right? And what we've seen in the past, at least 12 months, to take a recent statistics, like more than 90% of M&As were done on commercial companies for MedTech. So that's a big number, and there is a lot of noise in the field, in the VC field, about that specific statistic and how can we benefit or avoid the pitfalls of having a full portfolio of non-commercial company, because in that case you play like really low odds, right? So that's the full topic. I think we have been witnessing with a lot of interest what Edouard did recently on the M&A front with Endotronics and Yenavalve, also the valve company in Israel, I can't recall the name. Innovalve, thanks. Yeah. But that's actually an outlier. That's an outlier. The biggest ones were obviously Shockwave, Axonics, Relevant Med Systems from Boston, Apollo a bit before that. So that's more the trend, and how can we go there as a fund? That's really the question that drives us when we do our new investment.
So Marco, very early, you were involved very early. Is there strategic validation contacts? Is that already a topic, and are you trying to being active there, or is it premature at that stage where you work with them?
Yeah, I mean, the contact of the early stage companies with strategic partners is of course a topic. So we are always trying to involve our network and bring the companies to strategic partners that we think is perhaps a potential strategic investor also. What we experience is that the global players, so the big companies, are not interested. They are waiting longer. They are then buying the full companies that is already on the market. What we think is a very interesting topic for Germany, at least, is really to involve small and medium-sized companies that are a little bit more open to earlier stage companies that fit to their portfolio. But it became a little bit more complicated during the last years. That is what we are expecting or what we are seeing.
Okay, so Edouard and Laurent, exactly this last one, about second tier acquirers. Well, what is it you really what you see there? What has changed? Like not only Medtronic and Boston Scientific being active, but others too, and becoming more important.
Yeah, definitely on that. What we call small and mid-sized players, so typically corporate between, let's say, from $100 million till maybe $2 billion revenues. They know that for them it's difficult to compete on large deal, typically on the Boston Scientific, the Medtronic, etc. So for them, a way to innovate and to fill their pipeline is to be able to act on the earlier stage. So typically, this corporate will not wait that the company reach $5, $10 million revenues, break even, and so on, but they are acting earlier. And we've seen that since probably, I would say, 15, 18 months, on which the US mid-sized corporate, the European mid-sized corporate in Germany, in France, in Scandinavia, are more and more active on earlier stage deal, taking minority position, so taking minority stake, putting 2-3 million, but also considering licensing deal, which is a way for them to already put a step into the company and then to consider then a possible M&A. If they're waiting, let's say, a few additional years, of course, the company will become bigger with some possible valuation that will be difficult for them to pay or to deal with. And therefore, we see more and more that. We see more and more family business as well, getting into earlier stage deal, which is, I think it's a smart move. It's a smart move because it's a way to get innovation. It's a way to get a step into that. And also for them to differentiate themselves from the big and very large global corporate.
Laurent, you?
You said it all.
Okay. Okay. I think maybe before we jump to the next, Eli, I think I was discussing this with Leo before because you said what you say. These second tier players are becoming more active, and obviously they cannot pay that much. It kind of leads me to the thought that for founders and early investors, it would be very good to having been very capital efficient, right? Because if you have been capital efficient and you could achieve, important milestones, proof of concept, even first in man and things, and then you find one of these smaller players who is not able to pay 500 million, but maybe to pay 80 million. I think as an investor and founders group, you're still okay if you just invested 20, right? The problem comes if you had to burn up 100 plus, then you need like a huge exit to make it right for everybody. So if it's true what you say that these early people play, more often and become more important, it means that a given venture should think about how can I actively really be capital efficient to get to a relevant milestone that somebody would pull the trigger, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think definitely, of course, the amount of money that has been raised per company and then, of course, the valuation which go together is always a critical point. Of course, for company who raised $80-100 million plus, and then, of course, we get for the exit at pre-money valuation over 200-250 million. Yes, then it become very difficult, of course, for this second tier or mid-sized player to be competitive into that. So definitely for company who raise less, but we are more capital efficient. I think capital efficient is something critical and very important on what Beat mentioned, because if you could have achieved a significant milestone or value inflection points within a smaller amount of money, you still have a good value, but of course you don't get into, let's say, specific valuation, which become very difficult then to manage, and then we'll need to, what we see more and more in the US, Series D, Series E, Series F, etc., which at the end, companies raising, you don't know exactly when could be the exit. People have trouble to understand what are their goal and their objectives. So capital efficient is something critical, and we've seen that very frequently in the several sub-segments of the healthcare spectrum. We've seen that as well in digital health. I think digital health, we've seen the past few years massive, let's say, digital health, let's say, financing round, with then quite limited results in terms of revenue and commercial traction. And then, of course, it becomes more and more difficult then either to raise new money or to find a suitable exit, because there is a discrepancy between the amount that has been raised and what the corporate are then able to pay.
So now I have something to add, which is the solution to that, and we have done it recently in pharma and in MedTech, is to try to find an earlier exit with a smaller upfront than planned, and go together with the acquirer or the new majority shareholder with significant milestones that will bring back the value. And this is the only way to get out of the vicious circle you just described. It's not you, it's what you described. And it's very well accepted by boards and because then the team will stay and you build together either the regulatory milestone or the commercial milestone, and then you can get out of that. And some people are telling, yes, but the milestones are never paid. I will say, no. We are getting a year after, 2 years after, 3 years after, especially in medical aesthetic recently, real milestones that are paid because there is a progress. So it exists.
So I guess probably want to leave a few minutes for questions, but maybe you can talk a little bit about new fields that you see more activity in. Maybe Remi, you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so about new fields, I mean, as I said, just following the M&As. So look at what J&J, Boston, Medtronic have done in the past, and you will see where VC will funnel, money. Because, for instance, Johnson & Johnson just bought Abiomed for, I don't know, like 16, Shockwave for 13 billion. They will need to build business units around that. Right, they need to fuel the teams, so they will make new acquisition, lower end acquisition in the 601 billion range, I would say, in the next 5 years in these two categories, which they call structural heart, of course, and advanced coronary intervention. So you will see acquisition in that space, and we will try to be there, as a VC. If I may come back on digital health, I think that's a big topic. So I will ask, who are the acquirers? Who are the acquirers for digital health companies? And I think that's a topic. Are there any exit on the digital health side? The biggest company we see are, I don't know, if you take AI Doc in the US and the AI radiology space, a bit broader claim than that, but let's keep it simple. They do 50 million ARR. Is that big? 7-8 years after initiating commercialization, I don't know. Axonics on the MedTech side, in 3 years they were at 250 million sales. So I don't know about digital health in the next years. I don't know about the perennity of the sustainability, let's say, and the stability of the markets there beyond the DIGA or the French or the RPM con in the US, which is taking off bit. So my preference would be to follow the big MedTech M&As, and that is where we will funnel our money at Supernova Invest for sure.
Together with an AI component that will be everywhere, but with the hardware, with the device. I feel it's not even a sector by itself, AI or data generation from device, but I believe it's complementary and it will give a lot of value.
I mean, what people are trying to play as a card right now, can iterate a bit on that, it's to couple hardware with the software. So previously, talking about Medtronic, Boston, Abbott, and these guys, they are and still are hardware equipment. You know, they make equipment sales. GE, Siemens also. And now you have all these software companies that are accessible, and I think there is a lot of things happening on the side of people being able to couple hardware, a MedTech, with IP protection, with regulatory protection, together with the software, with a recurring part, and that's where the next big VC deals will happen, with the rise of the RPM codes in the US, obviously. That's a big topic for the moment.
Right, thank you. I mean, the question obviously is, and it depends a little bit on which stage you invest. But if you see at the given point of time now that this and this is hot in the industry, the question is, what's going to be hot in 4 years, 5 years, when the companies you invest in now will reach that? I mean, one mitigation is you go in very late stage, which obviously a lot of people have moved to. So if you say it just started out there, then there will still be a market for that. But if it's younger stuff, isn't it hard to predict what's going to happen, because of you're simply pro-cyclic if you kind of do whatever is being acquired now, right, on an early level?
Yeah, maybe a little thinking about early stage, which we still do at Supernova. We invest from seed stage up to late stage. So what my colleagues are looking at early stage deals are trying to do is first to do larger early stage deals. So we just closed a 16 million seed/Series A together with Sanara 2 weeks ago, a company named Discure, to try to cover within the first round as much milestone as we can. Try to breach the Series B, not doing any Series A. So that's the kind of the new seed. And secondly, we look at markets that have been change recently, like I'm thinking back pain with companies like Nevro, which is not doing so well these days, but did a big splash. I'm thinking glucose. I'm thinking also Axonics is now gone, Shockwave also, but all these new, like iRhythm, for instance, 1 billion to 5 billion MedTech companies that created a new dynamic on some markets. So we are looking at the next generation on this market. So we are looking at next back pain company, next ophthalmic stent companies, next cardiac monitoring company. That's how we see early stage investment in the next years.
Good, thank you. I mean, we had here aesthetics, patient monitoring, but given how far the time has advanced, I think what we probably want to do is to switch to enable the audience to ask questions to the respective person that is with a fund or a startup. So please,
any questions?
If there is any questions,
please raise your hands if you have any questions.
Thank you. I'm Elie Lobel. I'm the CEO of MedTech startup, and we are just in this phase between seed and Series A, which you were just mentioning. So I have a question about this stage and how you see the role of corporate VCs investing at this stage. Is this an opportunity or is this a risk for a startup company at this stage?
You're asking if it's, I think the involvement of a strategic, at least from what I've seen, provides a validation. So if you're able between seed to round A to bring in a strategic and build a make sense deal, I think it's going to help your company become stronger. What I'm seeing mainly is that it's the main issue at this stage with strategics could be that the time to build a deal sometimes is very long, and so you need some bridge funding in between until you secure a deal. So you have to be really proactive in terms of approaching angels, family offices, grant funding, almost anything that's out there and tapping on all resources, into all resources to get to the point where you structure the deal with the strategic. I think that that's the value of depth that we call. You have to be proactive in parallel, but I don't see any problem, partnering with a strategic at any stage, in my view.
Provided, of course, that you don't
Yeah.
really accept strings, things which
It makes
kind of
sense
make
deal,
you
yeah.
ineligible for everybody else. But I mean, they know that, you know that. I mean, that's kind of the rules of the game, right?
You don't want to give a right of first refusal for 10 years, before you have a product. But as long as it's a make sense deal where the terms are reasonable and allow you to continue to operate and build your business, I think it mainly provides validation, and also there's a lot of benefit in partnering with a strategic and getting an equity investment in terms of the feedback to the market and being able to bring your product to market earlier and in a sort of more efficient manner, having a better product based on their feedback. So.
There's another question over here.
Hi, I'm Agnes Zoller, founder of InnoGrant Advisors. We support companies and VCs to come together, public and private funding. I would like to, first of all, thank you so much for the great insights. Really lovely to learn also about the new areas and the challenges. Would like to know more about how do you see the public funding coming into VC, with the VC together into companies? Is it a challenge? Is it an opportunity? What is hard in there? And I'm happy to discuss in the one-on-ones if you need any help about them, but want to really understand what you think about this combination here. Thank you.
I can say a little bit about that. So the funding that we have for our next series is to a large degree is also governmental and European funds. I think one of the challenges you will get are the rules on state support. So that there's a certain percentage that is allowable, and that is sometimes a bit difficult. I see that different of those entities have different perceptions and rules, so they keep pointing at each other. So it is a bit of a challenge. At the same time, it also gives you only need to raise half the amount, so that helps. There's pros and cons. I think it's good that it is there. I think Europe, the Netherlands could even be a little bit more proactive in there. I think there are other regions in this world who don't care so much about state rules things, but really take it at a very high level, strategic level. And I would love to see that a little bit more as well.